Welcome to the iNETrepreneur radio show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNETrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network, we're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here today on the iNETrepreneur Radio Network. This is the iNETrepreneur Radio Show. I am Robert W. Jones, and I'm glad that you are here with us today. We go out on all these different channels, and I like to say it each week, but you know what? I know you're somewhere out there, and I know you're listening, to us today, and I'm glad that you're with us in this time frame. You know what? We've gone through such a crazy amount of time this last 18 months. For a lot of us, we've become stronger, we've become resilient, we've become greater because COVID has caused us to be that way. But let me tell you, not in every industry is the same. Some industries are still suffering. And I want to think about, some of the industries, and we might talk about a little bit of it today, how our digital rock stars, are here to help. And that's what I am. I'm here to edify them as they edify you, the audience who listens to the iNETrepreneur Network. But, I'll have a little bit of housekeeping to start before we get into our first guest. And the first housekeeping is I just want to remind everyone, we have ntevents.net. ntevents.net is a short URL that gets us to the over 1,000. We have over 1,000 meetings and events that you as an entrepreneur can, attend each and every year. We have academy classes there. We have our big stage, both virtual and in-person events there. And we also have, many trainings and more. We're looking for entrepreneurs who want to come in and do some lightning presentations. I mean, if you're an accountant, if you're a realtor, or if you're another digital marketer, if you're a landscaper, if you're any skilled services, or you're in the health and wellness fields, please come check us out and see if we can get you booked in one of our chapters. I also am excited that, our last book, Art of Connection, which is right back here behind me, Art of Connection's 365 Days of Networking Quotes, was an international bestseller 3 times over, both in the print and the digital version. So I'm really excited about that. Publisher came back to me and said, let's get this book out again. So right now we're gearing up to have our second issue of The Art of Connection coming out. The Art of Connection, 365 Days of Inspirational Quotes. And what we're looking for is entrepreneurs, business owners, and influencers who want to create their mark for other entrepreneurs, business owners, expert speakers, etc. in their field, so they can get a dose of inspiration and they become part of our third book and our third edition. So I guess I'm plugging the third one already. But I'm glad that you guys are all here today. And, my first guest is going to be coming on right now, and his name is Zyan. Zyan, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, I am doing really well. And, I'm just going to start off like this. See, Zyan, I feel like we have that Texan spirit, that maverick spirit with each other. And it's just
Absolutely.
Like, if there's a will, there's a way. If there's a way to improvise, overcome, and adapt for ourselves and others, we're always looking for that, aren't we?
Hey, we're always, can you name another state that was its own country for a split second?
They don't call it the Six Flags of Texas for nothing, right?
Exactly.
In today's show, what we're talking about is, and I go over this with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I say, every entrepreneur needs 3 things, more exposure, more clients, and at the end of the day, more money. And, I really want to start with the exposure construct. People sometimes they think of exposure as either a magic bullet or something that never pays off. And I think really it lands somewhere in between. It doesn't pay off because maybe your messaging is to the wrong audience. It doesn't pay off because maybe you're using the wrong methodology or methods, on where your audience resides, and sometimes, quite frankly, and Dave and I will probably talk about this later, sometimes you just have a very convoluted, unclear message or vision, and I don't care who you are, you can create messages all day long. You can get yourself out there in digital media, but if you don't have a great mission to start with, guess what? You probably won't hit your intended audience, even if it is your intended audience, right?
Exactly. So
You know,
really,
so
to take that one
let's
step further, it's
go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's fine.
Okay. So to take it one step further, exposure isn't really the end goal. It's what you do with the exposure. Of course, you can't do anything if you don't have anyone viewing your content, but what you really should be doing is getting data off of the people who are looking at your content so you can know why they like your content, so you know to keep posting it. It's very interesting. Like if you look at YouTubers, they'll start out the gate really hot. They'll get 100, a million subscribers, and then you'll see them change, and then they start doing something else. They do a different game or they cover a different topic, and then their numbers start to stagnate, but they fail to ever realize their subscribers are there for a certain kind of content, and they never bother to ask until it's too late. Just like how no one asks you why you opt in for an email, but they're quick to ask you why you're going to unsubscribe. And so it's really just, the exposure is great, but if you're not using that exposure to learn more about your customer base so you can figure out what it is that they actually want from you and that customer journey that they do want to take, because a lot of companies have the corporate customer journey, which is what you hope your customers will do, because they don't talk enough to their customers to actually figure out what they do so that they can just make that process as seamless as possible for them.
Yeah, and many times when we talked about this before on the show, I actually, kind of went through the time when, you had the web and then you went to Web 2.0. And
Yes.
really the only difference was from web to Web 2.0 was it's like, oh my God, you could have user interaction, you could have user generated content. And, that was like the coolest thing. Again, I'm loving that Dave's going to be on the show, because I remember the old bulletin boards and seeing the blinking icon, and you're like talking to someone on the other end. I can see him laughing at the green room right now. It's so amazing how far we come. And see, I didn't, I grew up, I don't want to say I grew up with the carrier pigeon, Zyan, but I grew, and I don't want to say I had a cup and another cup and a string in between, but I really kind of grew up in a different generation. I feel like I was a part of the growth of the early industry and what we see now. And like what I love about talking with you is a lot of the fruits of the labor of that, the initial backbone of this internet, you've kind of had to find your own way. And like KPIs for me are much different. Key performance indicators for me in my day are much different from key performance indicators in your day. And a lot of this is like, man, are you driving fans? Are you driving likes? Are you driving emojis? Are you creating an impact, in influence in whatever you do? It's changed a lot, hasn't it? Even in the last 2 or 3 years, hasn't it?
It really has. The landscape has changed, because before, with the normal web, it was special that you could access the internet, and then with Web 2.0, now we can all access the internet together simultaneously, and so it's definitely changed, but the fundamentals don't. Understanding your customer better never goes wrong, whether we're talking billboards or we're talking newspapers or we're talking Facebook ads or we're talking Snapchat. Like it pays to have data on your customer, not the super in-depth of give me all your social security number and how much do you make, but just like, hey, what do you care about in your t-shirts that we make? Is it the quality or is it the fact it's affordable? So that way you can know where to build the brand.
Yeah, is it the flexibility? Is it that they can scale? There's conversation after conversations, and like sometimes and here I see it all the time. Back in my day, we had to work really hard on the message, and we had to create really memorable things, and we had to hope that other people would port and take it with us, and we didn't have these constant technological reminders, which we do now. We didn't have the drip campaigns. We didn't have the text messaging. We didn't have, any instantaneous. Certainly, there was no Clubhouse. Come on,
for
now.
Sure, for sure.
There was no rooms that we could go out to and just hang out with and talk about subject matters, which matters right then. It's different now. But again, the other things that are different now too is, you talked about data. And I want to talk about that because a lot of entrepreneurs, they hear about it all the time, and some of us, they start out. And I always say, what does a small business look like? A small business looks like someone who's working a corporate job and they're doing some side gig income. For a lot of us, that's your small business. Then small business gets into being maybe a solopreneur, and they have a person of one, or they hire their kid or the husband or wife, right?
Yep.
All of this is evolving. And when I was doing that back in the day, it took a team to be able to do all this. But, now I said, we're having a convergence of the in-person, the digital, and the traditional marketing mechanisms where you yourself, Zyan, can be kind of a self, publishing machine, can't you?
You really can. Like, you have all of the tools, thanks to obviously all the form work that you guys did to lay down the foundation. But now there is no excuse, because you have every single way of outlet that you can imagine. If you're not great over video, great, do a podcast or do Clubhouse or just write. If you're not a good writer, okay, well then do video content on TikTok or on Instagram. Like, you have your options, but it really goes back to making sure whatever you do make, it's engaging and it's going after the right people. iOS 15 is coming out in September, and a lot of people are going to start getting, a lot of their shit's going to start hitting the fan, because
right.
they don't have an easy way to communicate and get data off of their customers, because you can't split test anymore. So now you have to ask. And the biggest problem that companies are having now is they're so used to this digital world that they don't know how to interact with customers anymore. I would say the highlight of all marketing and advertising was back in the days of where copywriting, if you couldn't get their attention in the newspaper, you weren't going to make a sale. And now we've gotten so complacent with, we'll just take these random photos and these random copy, and then we'll just put it in Facebook ads and it'll make so much money, or we'll just put it into a keyword search and it'll make so much money. But we don't even think to go back to the customers anymore. It's all about this automation tool or this software or this algorithm. And we've really lost the personal touch of sales, but it's going to have to start coming back as everything tightens down with this whole internet policy thing.
And we've lost the personal touch of people. It's like you can A/B test, a platform. You can A/B test a message, man. But the other thing too, and this is what I love about learning with even the VAs that we have. You can A/B test with VAs to see, their engagement, their passion, their pitch, their tone, their feeling. All of these things, matter too, because at the end of the day, I was joking, but I'm not joking. When I have a cup on one side and I have a cup on the other, and there's a string in between, the string's just technology. But at the end of the day, is my service able to serve you?
Yes.
Or am I the company that's hiring the team that's able to serve you? Because quite frankly, that's what it's all about. I always love, I always talk, I have this class and it talks about commerce, and a lot of people, they hear commerce and they think about it, but they don't necessarily know what commerce means, right? They don't necessarily know what currency means. Well, a long time ago, commercer, was commerce between two individuals. Let's just get it down to that. I have salt, you have sugar, I'll trade you my salt for your sugar. And we both, we both benefit. And I think a lot of times, we forget people have changed. And this is where I'm seeing a whole different shift. A total massive shift in what's going on out there is, people in, like my kids, I got a 12-year-old, I got a 15-year-old, I got a 21-year-old. And you know what? They don't get anything unless they get to try it. They don't buy anything unless they get to taste it. They don't want to spend anything because they live in this Missouri state of show me. Everything to them is show me. They feel like you can fake the fans and you can fake the television show and you can fake the message, but you know what? You can't fake what they can taste, see, hear, feel, etc. Tell me a little bit about, like the generation that you work with. Are they correct in stating that, Zyan?
So yes, and this is why whenever you're on YouTube, if you ever get entrepreneur ads, you're seeing a lot more behind the scenes of the CEO talking about, this is why I built this company and why it means so much to me, because we know very well how easy it is to make a drag and drop website. Because you can go on Wix, you can pay $20 a month, and you can have your granddaughter even do some drag and drop and have a decent-ish looking website, and then you can have some behind the scenes Alibaba action for a dropship store. Like, as far as building a business, it's never been easier. Like, could you imagine in the 60s really trying to source all of these materials? But now you can do it all from your laptop and it'll take you about 20 minutes. But what you can't fake is strategy and understanding and results. And so we're kind of done with this whole showboating thing, because we've seen our friends on Instagram as a 20-year-old. We've seen our friends on Instagram rent the cars and show off the flashy life, but then you go back home and you visit them and they work at Walmart and they don't really have that car. That was their grandma's car for the weekend. Like, everyone has gotten into this showboatiness that is social media. And so the only way to cut through the noise is to be like, here's the actual raw thing, taste it for yourself, see it for yourself. Here's the free trial, here's the free test. And that's the only real way to separate, because that's how the only way to know real from fake is by touching it.
and polished is good, but polish isn't everything now.
No.
A lot of people, they want some raw involved too, because they feel like sometimes the raw part, RAW, is like I'm getting close to the person who I really want to engage, the thought leader of that company,
Exactly.
And in my world, we work with a lot of C-suite, we work with a lot of CEOs, and they hire these corporate trainers, and they're failing, and they're failing because the very things that worked before, they don't work anymore.
No.
Ace and I can talk about that as well. They don't. No one wants to be trained at. They don't want to be talked at. They want to be trained with.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be engaged with.
They want an experience.
They want to be a part of the overall experience to grow. I mean, I have a real estate and investment, arm of the iNETrepreneur network, and the people come not because they're wanting to just get something out of it. They want to come because they want to express something into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is totally different than what I used to have 10 years ago. It used to be everyone just wanted to be a butt in the seat, and they just wanted to listen to some guy or gal sit up there on stage.
They just wanted a spot on the rocket. Yeah.
Now it's like, the mentality of like, I just want to be a winner is going away, because it's not about being a winner. It's about being a succeeder. How can I take as many people with me? But with that, one thing I love about you is you always give me like 2 or 3 or 4 tools, up and coming tools, just like there's up and coming people. You give me like up and coming tools. What are some of the tools that you're seeing? They're just making a tremendous amount of impact in the world that you live in.
So this isn't more of a tool and more of a strategy just in general, is zooming out from all the KPIs of Facebook or anything that you're doing, any type of marketing, advertising on. Stop zooming in so much on the micro of, with this platform, we made X amount of money, but on this one, we made this amount of money. Focus on the big picture of the entire customer journey, because that's really where that's where you shine at. It's not converting them on the first go around. It's putting them in the system, getting them a part of the community, getting them to be repeat buyers. That's really where we're going to start seeing the difference as things start to tighten down with online advertising. Is we're going to see who actually values their community and who's just here for the quick sales. And those quick sales people are going to drop down like flies, and it's not even funny. So if you don't know your customers, this is the perfect time to get to know them, because we're even seeing on the corporate side of things, companies aren't hiring, or you can't just hire anymore because you're paying a lot of money. People who hire, they want to be a part of a good company culture. You're hearing that word now a lot, culture. They want to be part of a team. They want to have their voices heard. It's no longer like, hey, I'm going to pay you to just do this outline every day and you're just going to do the thing. We actually all want to be part of an experience, because as this gets increasingly more digital, it feels more and more almost distant.
It's like, man, the reason why I have to buy in the community, the reason why I want to feel, and I'm getting goosebumps on this, the reason why I want to feel included in a company, because the thing with digital, in a certain respect, it takes away that humanity. But if we can recreate it with the bond of the community, then it brings that, humanity back. And I think that for a lot of it, that's what it was. I mean, I spent, myself so many years to get everything over here, to read the zeros and ones in the data flow. But then all of a sudden, now I got to bring it back and bring back in the human flow. I mean,
exactly. It's exactly that.
But it's, and we're going back from technology to now, once again, a little bit amount of touchology. I watched a video of Dave, before we came on today, and he's another guy. I think he understands it. He's like, man, I'll trip around and I'll look good, but I want people to feel me, and and I really think that he comes across in that, and and Ace is the same way. Well, William, I'm Zyan. I mean, it just goes way too fast each and every time that we talk. Let one tool before you go. What is one tool that you can impart on that we can kind of memorialize today?
Form Toro. This is a data collection tool, best in the industry. Couldn't recommend anything else. That's probably the number one secret weapon of going forward.
Well,
for all businesses,
and I love it. My dad used to always tell me, if you can't do it yourself, find someone who can do it better than you. And I don't want to do anything myself anymore. I just want to find anyone who's better than you. And you do so many things that are great. You're a rock star, Zyan, and I just want to thank you for being on our show here today.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and if you have time, stay around, and we can kick back in the the green room
of course.
afterwards.
Let's do it.
All right, thank you so much.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
I just want to thank Zyan Williams-Crain for being a part of the show today. He's definitely a rock star. I've gotten to see him do a few presentations in the iNETrepreneur network, and I just am reaching out to him and just plugging him to do some more lightning presentations within the community. He brings so much value and insightful thought that you will always walk away with a person you want to meet, a tool you want to use, or a strategy that you want to implement. And, quite frankly, it doesn't get any better than that. To hit one of them is great, but to get all three, you can't beat that. And Zyan is that guy. So I just want to thank you again, Zyan, for being on the show. My next guest is, she's a rock star in her own right. And I'm really excited to have her on this show. Ace, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, Robert. Thank you.
Well, I am glad you're on the show. I always say, it's just, the more and more I get to see you, the more and more I get to like you, and the more I just get to trust you. And I think it's all about the relationships, is it not?
100%. I appreciate that. I think the first time I met you, I know you mentioned you have an array of skills, but whoever your graphics producer is, wow, this is incredible.
Well, I appreciate that. And, when I think about you, since you haven't been on the show before, and Zyan and I have, delved into a little bit about how he got where he was, and, some pivot points, a lot of people don't know you, in our audience yet. And, you are a fast rocket. And we've talked about that before. I mean, if I have your permission, can I say that you haven't even passed the 30 mark yet, but you have, you've been with some high profiling people. You've been on some really nice gigs. You run with a great crowd, but what really makes you incredible to me, and this is a part of the story about your who and why, is, you still don't forget, the roots. You still don't forget, where you start, who's been impactful in your life, and how, you're not one that's just leaving them. You're the type of person that I see is you're trying to take, it's their choice if they come or not, but you open the door to say, come with me. Am I right in that?
Oh, yes. Thank you for that. That's great. It's actually a wonderful assessment. I do believe a true leader doesn't leave anyone behind. But like you said, if they choose otherwise, that's a different story.
But you do it for your community. You do it for your culture, but then you're also colorblind, and I appreciate that. And and I talk a lot about that because I come from two worlds. I come from an Anglo world, and I come from a Mexican world. I always I always used to tease people. I'd say, yeah, I'm a half taco. So,
Oh, that's great.
And being of like two different cultures, I think there's certain sensitivities that, I have also, that others. And like I said, what I like about you, Ace, is, you care about the passion, you care about the process, and you care about the people. And when it comes to, helping your clients, get exposure, and Zyan kind of put this really well for us, is, your job is really getting the story out of people, but you also have a story, but you haven't always owned a company. You haven't always been at NBC Universal. You haven't always done these things. But, I just want to go back to where in that pivot point in life where you said, what, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to do greater things. I'm going to create a greater impact. Was there a time frame, or was there a person, or was there just a situation that just the light bulb went off and you said, what, this is where I'm going to put my life? What happened in that instance?
Oh, that's great. So, you touched on a lot of great points, and you did.
And no crying. Okay. No crying. Okay. No,
It's okay. I will not cry. Although tears are strength. I'm going to mention that. One thing that I remember was, so I was in college. I was 19 years old. I went to school to be a teacher, fun fact, before going into the entrepreneurial space, before going into media. And I remember something about it was just not exactly the right fit. And then I realized I really loved communications. Didn't know what I was going to do in it. Ended up trying everything. So I did 6 internships in college. I did radio, I did TV, I did music. And I learned a lot, and I stayed in touch with those mentors. I also didn't have family in the industry beforehand, right? And a lot of people say, like, the connections, that's not an excuse. It really isn't.
Ace, I just want to make sure. Right now, I can't hear you. We might have lost the feed that was coming in. Oh, there you're back. Okay, great. And
okay, great. Awesome. That was really random. Anyways, I'm here. So essentially what I found is that as I was eating and learning, and I just learned to be a really good student, the big pivotal moment to launch me into truly being who I want to be and who I wanted to do, or like what I wanted to do, was a breakup.
like with a person.
Yeah, like a breakup,
Okay, not a
relationship.
job, not a company, but a person. So there was a breakup. I mean, now this is a first on the show, so you're going to ring the bell in the back of the room on that one, because I've never had anyone say my pivot point was a breakup. But I got to hear this.
So I was in a relationship in college, and I thought, it wasn't the most healthy relationship. So I took it upon myself to fall in love with who I am, what I do, what I'm good at, what I want to contribute to the world. And as I kept, it was like that relationship that I was in did this arrow thing where I was the arrow and it pulled me back, right? Reeled me back, and then launched me into doing 6 internships, into learning as much as I can from the people around me. And, I had great, great, great mentors, one of which gave me an incredible philosophy on life, Daisaku Ikeda. I think we've mentioned this. He has an incredible philosophy around life and faith and happiness. And all of that started to shift and move in the direction of what I wanted to do and fulfill my dreams. So, and I'm still there. I'm still moving, and I'm still going as hard as I can.
And I found, a lot of people who, tend to be, and I'd like to get some data. So this is going to go on Zyan here. I got to get some data on this, but I have found that a lot of people who have a heart for teaching also really do very well as entrepreneurs. There's a lot of qualities that leaders need to lead. And it's changed. You have to have both the masculine and the feminine. But, one of the things that I've learned is great leaders, if anything else, don't just lead by example. They teach their example. And I think that that's where, you're able to, just like you can automate a process in 0 and 1s, like computer programming, coding, etc. I think you can also automate the processes of actually, helping people level up. And I think that there is no greater shift than you can do in a culture, than helping people, level up, be a part of and create impact, as well. And the other thing is, I think that a lot of the entrepreneurs that I have on the show, and this goes back about, what does exposure looks like? Exposure looks like the strength and the vulnerability. Exposure looks like, to a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've worked with and had on my stages and written articles, etc. The one thing that I went to this one, mastermind, and it's the guy who makes these wonderful, beautiful cars and that are run on sustainable energy. And he always said, the reason why I do best is because I know myself best. And I think that that's what, true entrepreneurs do. They know their weaknesses, they know their strengths, and they know how to be vulnerable, and they know to show strength when needed. And I think that all of these things actually make for good stories when you work with entrepreneurs looking for exposure, doesn't it?
It does. I think what I look for in entrepreneurs, and I've learned, is, you want to know a person's character, right? You want to understand exactly what their weaknesses, strengths are, if they're open to working with you, if they have something that they want to challenge and grow in themselves. As you mentioned, as a teacher, yes, it is incredible, great training for any entrepreneur, because as you teach people, you know how to lead. You also know how to use your voice in front of an entire classroom of kids that are your height, because I'm 5'2". And at the same time, right? Like I remember, I get anything from 12 to 40 ever since I was 12, which is really interesting. But what I found was that if you can use your voice in a room of 30 kids, you can use your voice anywhere and teach anyone anything. That leadership quality can help you promote people within your company. And it's actually better to do that. Having people grow, having that characteristic of seeing their growth, that's so pivotal in any business. Being able to do that and lead them into it.
I read a book by Deepak Chopra, and he talked about entrainment, and just like the birds that fly who have an entrainment, people also can create a conventional awareness and entrainment within themselves. And that's called corporate culture. And, it's one of the things that I want, I like to keep, because most companies, most people, most brands, lines, etc., the one thing they're always searching for is loyalty. But I always said, if you really want to find true loyalty, learn how to establish bonds, because bonds are even much more healthy and have much more strength than just the loyalty itself. If you have great bonds, you truly have relationships, and it's those relationships that create exposure and growth, in ways that you can't measure otherwise. It's like playing basketball or doing soccer. You have some soccer players and they have great stats, and then you have other soccer players, and they don't show up on the stat sheet, but they always have it,
Right.
And that's where, like, for me, I look for people myself that have the it of, it doesn't always have to be, even like, just the KPIs and even the data. It's like, what is fed in between the number, and that's some of the things that, I think we as entrepreneurs, as we grow and scale, we need to look for that as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you made. So I was speaking to somebody about loyalty the other day, and I found that loyalty is it's very different to be loyal and very different to be subservient.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's big difference, very big difference. Loyalty isn't doing doing what somebody tells you on command. Loyalty is, this person did something for me when I didn't ask. They either protected me, took care of me, did the best they could with me. And that loyalty comes from that appreciation of what that person did.
Yeah. And loyalty comes from many ways. And much of the time it comes from stories. And, one of the things that I hear in my industry is, they talk about the hero's journey, and the hero's journey is where, there's something that needs to be overcome. They might have set up, maybe they were a king and all of a sudden they lost their kingdom. And then all of a sudden they had to, bring some forces back and, maybe come in through a political way. And then they rose back to become the king again or something like that, or queen, but that's a story I hear a lot. But, being a part of, working in Instagram and having like spot stories and having to create something really on the fly, almost out of thin air, you can't necessarily always have a hero's journey. It's not like you have necessarily an Instagram slideshow to work with, right? Sometimes you really have to just say, boom, I got to put this digital canvas out there, and I got to be able to attract, some people really quickly. And, without giving away secrets, what do you help entrepreneurs kind of, muddle through so you can get some clarity when you actually work on an Instagram campaign? What's some of the magic, that you use with them to get them, connection?
That's a brilliant question. Thank you. So what I do is I actually try to understand the product in a way that aligns with their mission in life. I know that's very deep. I know.
I always say, if it works, keep going, because I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So there's 3 questions I ask any entrepreneur who's looking to create or have an Instagram campaign. 1, what is your biggest challenge? And like the biggest challenge you overcame in your life? how did you overcome it? And how is your product helping other people overcome it as well? It could, right? It could be your story. It could be your business. It could be your book. It could be anything that you can deliver to people. And what I found is once people have that in alignment, then we know exactly who their audience is, because essentially the way that, like think about skateboarders, right? What is the one thing, or adrenaline junkies, what they love doing comes from a place of pulling themselves into the present because they're overcoming some type of trauma, right?
Yeah.
Right. And if you have a product that does that helps people in that way, kind of like, for me, it was mental health in the beginning.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is that part of you, your audience can be skateboarders.
Right. Yeah. In talking about that audience, one of the formulas I have, and I have no problem, giving away formulas, is, when it comes to entrepreneurs, I always say, you really should work towards three things: tears, fears, and cheers. And people ask me, why tears, cheers, and why tears, fears, and cheers? Because, tears is emotional. Am I causing an emotional response, from you that can lead me from tears, or am I creating something to get rid of your tears? Right? Is it fears? Is it the fear of missing out? Or, is it the fear to overcome something? And then cheers, for most of us, we're either rooting against or we're rooting for something, and to me, and those are lots of like micro stories that help us, bring people, in, because every one of us has those at one time or another. And if you can craft and create stories in those 6 areas, fears, cheers, and tears, you're going to create a great cause and effect in any story, especially when we go through the whole hero's journey, because you know what? I only have so much time to, watch The Lord of the Rings, right? But,
full marathon.
But with you, tell us some things. So I'm going to go back into like what you do now. So tell us some of the things you work with. Some major studios in the United States. You go from coast to coast, and you in a way you help people, and you're kind of like a talent acquisition. And you bridge and you bring a lot of people together. What are you looking for in entrepreneurs that you want to help them achieve a glow stick that they might not otherwise have the opportunity to have? What is it that you look for?
It's funny that you mentioned that. So I actually spoke with somebody today that didn't even think about taking on an entrepreneurial role, but I started seeing a few things. So I went to a party for Pride, in LA, and
right.
I took a longboard with me, right, to get into this, and I went into a restaurant. The security guard took care of my longboard and looked for me and really took care of me, which was really interesting. And I'm not saying that from an egotistical space, like take care of me, I'll take care of you. That wasn't
right.
Did it without even without any provocation. Like he just really wanted to take care of what I had with me, and he promised and committed and then followed through. That's what I look for.
And I think that's exactly what people are looking for in their communities. I mean, I absolutely do, in every sense of the word. Now, you're new to the iNETrepreneur Network. I believe you're coming out in our next magazine, which is going to be, coming out in a couple of weeks. I've seen some versions of the magazine. We have a new team that is designing it. It looks stellar. And anyone who's watching out there, just contact me. I'd love to have you in there. We have, low cost, high impact ways of getting out there to other entrepreneurs, business owners, and influencers. We've organically grown to over 30,000 strong, with our magazine, the subscription, and we have it both in print and digital. And I want to say, Ace, thank you for being in our magazine. I have your information going across here. Are there other ways to find you besides the scrolling artwork that I created?
Yes, you can actually just Google me. I noticed the search, Ace Doligosa, and everything about me comes up, especially my Instagram, my Twitter handles, everything you need.
Yeah, you're so lucky. I keep searching for Robert Jones, and for some reason, I'm just, I'm still trying to get myself up there. Robert Jones, there's a lot of them out there. Every once in a while, I might see myself up in a Google image, with other mugshots, but, I think I'm out there somewhere. But, thank you again so much for being on the show today, Ace. I treasure our time because you have a lot of insights into what you do and who you are. You share that with others, but you also bring this out in others, and that's what I really am thankful for. And, let's do this again. Let's get you some lightning talks and, let's do some more stuff together. Sound good?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the time. This was incredible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much as well.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
All right. I want to thank Ace for being in our last segment and Zyan, of course, before. And this is what I like is, this is why it's always great to have not a person or a couple of people, but have a team. Zyan gives us great insights. Ace gives us different insights. They come with different stories. They're also able to probably see things in the people that they work with that we don't, necessarily see ourselves. Sometimes the hardest critic is the ones that we see in the mirror. I was talking to a gal today and she said, but if I do this and if I do this and if I do this, I feel like I'm an imposter. And I said, no, you're not an imposter. If you do this and if you do this and if you do this, you really put yourself out there. What you really are is an expert, because no matter what, everyone that will flow to you, you have something to offer them that they don't know previously. Be that expert, get yourself out there. And which really leads me to our next guest, which I'm really excited about having on our show today. I have Dave Kramer. Dave, how are you doing?
Hey, having a blast. How about you?
Hey, I am having a blast, and that's what I love about having a radio show or a conversation, or, it doesn't matter. It's like, I always say, the best times are where you can learn and learn how to earn. And, anytime I can get myself around, entrepreneurs, I know I'm always going to be in that space. Don't you think so?
Yeah. I always say, if you do what you love, you'll always love what you do. And, working for somebody else, you don't get the flexibility to decide where you're going to work and when you're going to work. And that's what I've always loved about entrepreneurship.
And what I love about entrepreneurship too is, like for you and me, I always like to say we're strange cats. Even Ace and Zyan are strange cats, because I realize a lot of people say that. You and I love it. I've been an entrepreneur since 1999. I've been ups and downs. I've cried. I've rejoiced. It's that tears, fears, and cheers. I've had them all. Believe me. And I've had a few beers. All of that has happened over the years, right? But the thing is, it's resiliency. It's persistence. It's just like having a passion to help others. And a lot of people don't. You see it too. Sometimes, if you love what you do and do what you love, that doesn't always necessarily mean become an entrepreneur, does it?
No. And that's actually an acceptable thing. If you try it and you realize that you really belong somewhere else, at least you found out, right? Now you know your personality and you know where you belong.
And personality, for the longest time in my life, personality was always someone else's job to do. It was that salesperson, or it was that trainer. It was it was the spokesperson. In my background, I've been fortunate enough to work for some big companies, like I'm sure you have, and it kind of created a framework. I've been at GoDaddy, and I've been at Intuit, Linsco Private Ledger, Realtor.com. Corporate stuff, Nuvalix, eFood Safety, the list goes on. And I worked in their tech and marketing departments all the time. But I was always like there doing the stuff. And then there was always someone that was out, and they were the figurehead of the stuff. And of course, they could talk really well, much better than I could, but they couldn't do anything, Yeah. But, in the world we live in now, it does make sense to be able to do both, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I haven't worked for anyone in my entire life. I started my first business when I was about 8 years old. And by the time I graduated high school, I'd started 3 or 4 different businesses. So I've always had that internal spirit to just go out there and get it, right? And I think what that comes down to is my parents never gave me money. If I wanted something, I would have to earn the money myself. And they didn't even give me an allowance. They said, go figure it out, right? So I was selling candy at school. I was fixing VCRs in the garage. I was doing whatever I had to do to earn the money to acquire the things that I needed. And I think that was the best life lesson a parent could have given me was, that's how the real world works.
Well, I wish I had a little bit of that. I had an uncle and so my uncle was a home builder, and he also had a cabinet shop. And I used to think to myself, for the longest time after working for him, I'd go out, we would put cabinets in the homes, or, I'd help him, on the shop floor, etc. And after a day's worth of work, I'd get a Burger King Whopper, and I thought, if this is entrepreneurship, man, you can have it, because I'm not working all day sweating hard for a Whopper.
Yeah.
It actually took me some time to figure out, what entrepreneurism was, because, the way that I saw it, through him was much different than, if I wouldn't have had, that type of mental aspect. I always say, you can have mentoring also, you can have mentoring, but sometimes the mentoring you get is you're going to do the opposite of it, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think that's a good point. But also, I think entrepreneurs that are successful actually do what they do because of the passion and the love they have for what they're doing, not because they're chasing a dollar. I think that's a real big difference.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, when I saw it, I'm working for my uncle, and that's what I see for entrepreneurship. I saw, a Whopper is just not going to do it for me. That wasn't fulfilling me, let's say.
Right.
It was later on where I got fulfilled and I got that entrepreneurial bug, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you're 8 years old. You have 4 or 5 businesses. What were some of the businesses, and what did you learn from having these businesses at such a young age?
So the first one, when I was 8 years old, I found a quarter on the sidewalk, and I picked it up and I looked at it and I thought, I want more of these, because it was a quarter to play the video games at the arcade, right? So the more quarters you had, the more games you could play. So I went to the candy store and I bought 5 gumballs for a quarter, brought them to school the next day, and sold each one for 25 cents. So I was 5X on my investment in the first day. Another story I have, when I was 13 years old, I had learned how to fix all kinds of electronics. So I was fixing television, CB radios, answering machines, all kinds of stuff. And I walked into Radio Shack at 13 years old, and I said, you guys don't fix electronics. When somebody comes in with something broken, you tell them to buy a new one. And I said, I charge $25 an hour, and I will split it with you if you will just get a cardboard box and fill it with all the things that people bring you. I'll fix it, and the next day you can give it back to the customer. And they took me up on the deal. Wow. So I made my own little business fixing electronics after school. It was great.
I mean, look at that. You had a marketplace within their marketplace.
Yeah.
And so you came up later, that probably started you maybe like more of a technological side of your journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, going past, maybe the A+ side of, computers, when did you start getting into looking at computers and technology and marketing as actually a place that you kind of wanted to start getting into that space? Was there a pivot point that said, you know what, I'm liking this, but man, I'm going to go over here. What did it look like at that time?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So I always was kind of going between these two things. I really liked framing houses. I liked building houses, but I also had this technological side to me. I was always doing computer stuff and electronics, and all my friends would say, you got to go with the electronics. And I said, no, I think I want to go with building the houses. So one day I was working on a roof and I fell off and I broke my wrist. And I went to the hospital and I said, okay, I'm going with computers. It seems like a safer route.
Yeah. You know what? I apologize. It's just that area, because you gave me goosebumps on that. And I got to tell you why. So this is the second time in the show I've gotten goosebumps. I know why I didn't go into building, because when I was in the cabinet shop, within a 10-day period, 2 of the employees lost part of their fingers.
Ooh.
And one of them lost them on a router, and one of them lost it on a circular table saw, which didn't have the modern technologies that we have, with the nanosecond stop. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I don't want to be next. And that kind of got me in the side, even though, my choices, I went into the military. So I served in the Marines for 6 years, which that is where I started putting some of my younger computing skills in, because I was able to serve from a tech side in computing, but so you saw that happen. What was your first company called? Is it the same name, or was it called a different company back in the day?
Well, it's hard to say what my first company was, but I guess
in technology and marketing. Yeah.
Right. When I was 18 years old, I started A+ Communications, which was paging and cell phones. And I liked that because I knew that a lot of those pagers and cell phones would break, and they would come in and I'd get to fix them. It was also kind of like the internet of the time. Like, everybody wanted a pager or a cell phone. It was the way people communicated. So I could see a rising trend in the market, and I thought I'd get in on the bottom and ride that wave up. And I did. It was really successful. I became the #2 reseller in all of Northern California.
That's awesome. And, I remember when I was, working with corporations, and so there is a corporate side to it. And, like when you talk about repair, when you talk about, we talked about, some of the computers like the Commodore, or like me, I learned on the G3 and the G4, you could actually keep, those computers, the desktops or whatever, for years, and they would always work. And I remember when I worked in the corporate environment, they wanted to create a certain amount of obsolescence because they didn't want these things to last for years. Yep. But see, the dirty secret of it all, from the corporate side of it, it wasn't necessarily because they want you to necessarily just buy it again. It was also because they didn't want people to establish relationships with those who could repair those products.
Well, there's a lot going on with the right to repair right now.
Yeah. And, and so for us, because the thing is if we were channeling, if we were creating a profitability channel and we were selling, like some type of durable goods, the last thing we would ever want to happen is have you come in between us and disrupt that channel flow. And I remember that was like, one of the biggest things, and again, for people who don't understand corporate culture, people ask me all the time, they say, when is AI going to take over the world? And I tell people this all the time. AI has already taken over the world. Any corporate culture, they all have AI and they all have financial platforms. And believe me, there is no emotional bot that resides within that AI that says, hey, we got to take care of people at all, do they?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point what you bring up there, because that's what I've been implementing with my staff in my current company for the last 10 years, is taking younger people out of school, out of college, and teaching them how to put the digital down and how to have face-to-face conversations like this. So for the last 7 years, even before COVID, all of the customer support that we did was through Zoom, because I wanted to create that personal human connection from our staff to our customers. And it's to the point now where we know them when we see them come in. Hey, Joe, how's it going? How's your dog? Like we had that personal connection. And I even had to write an entire sales guide that describes to young people how to engage with someone that they don't know, and how to get to know them, and how to ask them about, their lifestyle and what's going on with them, so that we can create that connection.
And it's so important because, again, Zyan and Ace, they cut against the grain. My wife and I, we work with the local school districts. We work with DECA, we work with Junior Achievement. We go out to those schools. And I remember when we do mock interviews, and I remember having a mock interview with an extremely smart person, but they never had the in-person skill set. And I still remember asking him, I said, what is the hardest thing for you to do? And you know what he said?
Talk to people.
Look into a person's eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow.
I've seen that a lot.
yeah, and it struck me odd. And I said, and I asked him, I said, why is it looking into people's eyes? And he says, it's because I don't know how to do it. And
Wow.
and something so like I grew up looking into people's eyes and kind of looking at their facial expressions and seeing if they're engaged. And I'm thinking to myself, is it the same way at home? Is your mom texting you up in the room to come down to dinner? It really, yeah. And it was really, really crazy, but guys like you and me, we have seen a lot of change over the last, 25 years or so, and just a couple of things, where have you seen, definitely, some people call it evolving, other people call it devolving, and maybe we're evolving again. But, what are some of the shifts that you've seen, for entrepreneurs now to be aware of?
It's interesting. Something you were talking about earlier in this call was about the digital access to marketing materials and like the whole dossier we have now digitally on every single visitor to our website, and how that's now being taken away. I think it's going back, it's cycling back to where we need to create these personal connections. And I'm glad that over the last 11 years, I've been building that with my customers, because they've actually been approached by other companies with like emails that they weren't anticipating, saying, hey, leave Dave and come to us. And they're saying, well, who are you? You're just digitally just spamming a bunch of people. I don't know who you are, but I know Dave. I've hung out with Dave, and I know that he's going to take care of me. And when I need help, he's going to be there for me. So I feel like I have a really strong connection with my clients, so I don't have to worry about that. And that's what I advise when I'm coaching. That's what I advise all my business clients to do, is to create those personal connections. You really can't replace it with the AI and the automation. People know when you're sending them a form email, or you're sending out a text blast or something like that. Make it personal. And that's something that I'm continually repeating to the new hires that I bring on staff, is because they want to do everything digitally. Hey, we can just send out a mass email to everybody and say, no, we're going to make this personal.
Yeah. And, and at the very least, if you hire a company to do your digital technology services, please don't keep the messaging out on default, because there's nothing worse than getting the exact same script from 2 or 3 or 5 different people, is there?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the fastest way to to get to download, in my mind, the uncredibility bucket. And so what are some tools too as well, when we look at exposure and we look at the digital technology, what are some of the ways that you put humanology into your technology? And the other thing, I'm going to give you credit for this too. So that's my question, but I'm going to give you something really well. Tommy Haynes, we've had him on the show. He's come and he's done some presentations, because it's not just your relationship with your clients, it's your team's relationships with your clients, because you can only scale so far. And if you don't have that culture that's created, if you don't have that bonds within your own team, guess what? You're breaking links all up and down that channel, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I think that's where the problem is when technology got so easy to use over the last decade that everybody thought, oh, great, I'll just turn this thing on and it's going to run my business for me. And they completely removed the human element. I think technology is a lever, right? It's just like anything else. You leverage that to access more, right? So you can only do so much. But if you use technology in the right way, appropriately, it can help to be a multiplier to the activities that you're putting out there. And it also can help you to track all the different things that are coming into your business, all your phone calls, all your text messages, all your direct messages from all the social medias. If you have a way to funnel that through technology so that you know which people you want to follow up with at certain points in their journey, that's going to just optimize your time that much more.
Yeah. And one thing I tell in my coaching, I say, when I say technology should do one thing. And I said, it's make your relationship with your prospects and your clients better. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, technology can speed up a process, but it doesn't create the relationship. And I think that's where people have the mind, chatter they have the head trash of thinking like, if I set it on autopilot, it will come. But we both know that doesn't come, does it?
Yeah. What's so funny is everybody got around to getting cell phones because they wanted to have instant communication. When somebody wanted to get a hold of them, they could call their cell phone and they would be able to pick up. But then very quickly after that, you would notice that every cell phone you would call, all you'd ever get was voicemail. Why?
Right.
Why? The whole point of this was to make it easier to communicate with people. And then some people would have their voicemail box would be full and it can't take any more messages because they were getting inundated by this communication. So we need a way to filter through that and be able to have those human connections with the people that we want to interact with. And also on the marketing front, I think that one of the best ways to market is referral marketing. So if you have somebody who's used your services or knows you personally, and they refer you to someone else, or they refer someone else to you, that's a sale that just hasn't happened yet. All you got to do is get the logistics, and that's going to happen. That to me has been the easiest way to make sales.
Well, and the other thing is, like, I always say this too, because sometimes we forget, I call it technology abandonment. Sometimes, look at prior technologies and see the things that might have worked. I say this to networkers all the time. I say, when you enter a room full of apples, be the banana.
Yes.
And the other thing I say is, hey, maybe you think that even sending a handwritten card won't create customer retention, because we've abandoned that technology. I would say that you're sorely mistaken. Sometimes look at the things that we've left. These are even tools and things that you already know, and use them again, because you can also look like a rock star just by recycling something that happened before.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So Dave, I have your information scrolling across the screen, and I think that you and I are going to have a lot more chats as well. I mean,
I'd love that. That'd be great.
Because, all of us on this show today, Zyan, Ace, and EU, at the end of the day, we're servants, and we're here to serve other businesses, entrepreneurs, and influencers so they can be a part of that dream. Because, the feeling I always said, I don't like winning because there can only be one. And my track career, ended long ago. But, what I love about entrepreneurship, and helping people is you can take everyone. And I think that that's a big difference.
A rising tide lifts all ships.
Absolutely. Any other ways to get a hold of you, Dave, as your information crosses the screen?
Best way to get a hold of me is just send me a text at 863-356-5799. Ask me any question that's business related, and I'll get right back to you.
All right. Definitely. Well, I just want to thank you for being on the show here today. And I appreciate you. You took time. All my guests took time and effort to be here. And you came with me to be on this journey today.
Thank you, Robert.
All right. Again, my name is Robert Jones. We are here from 2:30 to 3:30 Pacific time each and every week. Of course, we're that crazy state of Arizona. The other 6 months of the year, we're on Mountain Standard Time because, just like those Texans, we're a little bit of a Mavericks in this state as well. You have places to go, things to do, but you took this time and energy to stay with us in this hour, and I want to thank you for it. I'm Robert Jones. I'm the founder and chairperson of the iNETrepreneur Network, and I want to thank you for being on the show with us today. Take care, everyone.
You've been watching the iNETrepreneur Show, a production of the iNETrepreneur Radio Network with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.